Not all greatness lasts forever. Some cities are built in glory, only to end up reduced to ashes. Some stories are forgotten, while others echo through the ages. And few are as epic as the legend of Gondolin, a secret city hidden from Morgoth's gaze, built by the Elves under the protection of the Valar, an impenetrable refuge, a jewel in Middle-earth, until everything crumbled. Gondolin wasn't just a city. It represented the last great hope of the Elves against the Dark Lord. For centuries, it remained untouched, immaculate, shining like a hidden star among the mountains. But what happens when confidence turns into complacency? When the greatest enemy isn't out there, but within your own walls? What happened to Gondolin is a brutal reminder that even the most secure fortresses can fall, and almost always they fall from within. Have you ever heard about the betrayal that led to its destruction? Did you know that legendary weapons from the Lord of the Rings, like Gandalf's sword, came from that lost city? And that, without its fall, Middle-earth would never have been freed from Morgoth? This is a story of glory and tragedy, of kings and traitors, of epic battles and desperate escapes. And if you think you know all of Tolkien's stories, brace yourself. This one is among the grandest and one of the most forgotten. So, if you want to understand how Gondolin arose, thrived, and was betrayed, and how its destruction shaped the destiny of Middle-earth, stick with me until the end, because this story isn't just about elves and battles, it's about the relentless cycles of greatness and downfall. Gondolin, a hidden city, a fortress raised by the unyielding will of the elves under Turgon's leadership. Imagine a secret realm, tucked away among impenetrable mountains, where towers soared like silver spears against the sky. To many, Gondolin was merely a whisper on the wind, a myth among the free peoples of Middle-earth. But for those who lived within its walls, it was the last hope against Morgoth, the Lord of Darkness. Tolkien described this city with a rare splendor, as if Valinor had left a shadow of its glory among men and elves. Gondolin's location was a secret guarded with iron and fire. Anyone daring enough to cross its borders without permission never returned to tell the tale. Protected by a chain of colossal mountains, the city seemed unreachable, an impregnable refuge for its enemies. But here's the point. Even the safest fortress can fall when danger comes from within. Think about it. You might build high walls in your life to keep the chaos at bay, but if the threat lies in the heart of those you trust, no barrier can hold. Turgon, the wise king of the elves, ruled Gondolin with the certainty that it would remain untouchable. He had learned, like few, that prudence is the mother of survival. But how many kings, how many leaders throughout history have faced the same dilemma? The arrogance of thinking we're safe can be our downfall. Gondolin was beautiful, but it was doomed to fall. Not because its walls were weak, but because fate always finds a way to infiltrate, like rain seeping through the tiniest cracks in stone. The city flourished. Its streets teemed with elves of remarkable skill, artists, blacksmiths, musicians, warriors. Tolkien makes us envision Gondolin as a dream come true. But dreams can be dangerous when they make us forget reality. Morgoth would never leave Gondolin in peace. He didn't need to know where it was. He only needed someone to betray their own people. How many stories in real life follow that same pattern? The most lethal threat often isn't from outside, but from within. The ambition of a single individual who risks everything. And so, while Gondolin shone like a jewel in the night, its end was already taking shape in the shadows. Turgon's glory, his hope for an eternal kingdom, was like a candle flickering against the wind. But the question no one dared to ask was, when would that flame go out? And worse, who would blow it out? Nothing in Middle-earth happens without a whisper from the Valar, and Gondolin was no exception. Turgon didn't discover the city's location by chance. He was guided by Ulmo himself, the Vala of the oceans, whose waters carry secrets and revelations. Ulmo whispered through the tides, the rivers, and even the morning dew, and it was in one vision that he revealed to Turgon the Vale of Tumladen, a hidden place in the heart of the mountains, perfect for raising an unreachable kingdom. See the irony. The one who rules the waters showed the way to a refuge on solid ground. Sometimes you have to trust the signs that destiny lays before you, even when they seem contradictory. But finding Tumladen was only the first step. Building Gondolin took decades. The elves worked tirelessly, carving stones, raising towers, molding the splendor of Valinor into the fabric of Middle-earth. Every detail was designed to reflect the beauty of the sacred city of Tirion, where the elves had once lived before the Great March. Imagine what that meant for them. To rebuild, amid a corrupted world, a fragment of the lost paradise. How many times have we tried to recreate moments of past glory? But the truth is, we can never go back. We can only move forward, carrying the memory with us. Gondolin wasn't just beautiful, it was impregnable. Surrounded by the Entirith Mountains, the city was protected by a single narrow, hidden path. There was only one entrance, and the elves ensured it was guarded with both magic and strategy. Think about it. Controlling access is the first step to keeping anything secure, whether it's a city, knowledge, or even your own peace of mind. Tolkien subtly teaches us that protection comes from prudence and the careful choice of who we allow into our lives. Ulmo, however, warned Turgon, no fortress is eternal. He cautioned that one day the city would fall if its inhabitants closed themselves off too much from the outside world. But the king wouldn't listen. How many times in life do we ignore warnings that could save us? How many empires, companies, even relationships have crumbled because someone chose to cling to pride instead of facing reality? Gondolin grew and thrived, but its fate was already sealed. When we ignore the voice of reason, we're merely delaying the inevitable. And so, while the elves raised their golden towers and sculpted wonders in stone and silver, a whisper still echoed in the winds. Beware, for water always finds a way. But did Turgon truly believe it? While Gondolin flourished in secret, the world outside burned under the shadow of Angband. Morgoth, the Lord of Darkness, launched war after war against elves and men, trying to subjugate Middle-earth. But then came the siege of Angband, an almost unthinkable feat. The elf armies managed to hold Morgoth at bay for nearly 400 years, 4 centuries during which evil was kept in check. And during that time, while the enemy was trapped within his own fortress, Gondolin grew, thrived, and became even more magnificent. Sound familiar? How many times does the illusion of peace make us believe we're untouchable, that danger will never come? But calm always precedes the storm. Within Gondolin's walls, the elves lived in full splendor. It was a time of learning and growth. The blacksmiths forged weapons and armor of quality unmatched anywhere in Middle-earth. If you've ever heard of Glamdring, the sword wielded by Gandalf in The Lord of the Rings, or Orcrist, Thorin Oakenshield's blade, know that both originated from Gondolin. Turgon's elves were not just builders, they forged history itself. And isn't that how life is? A time of peace shouldn't be a time of rest, but one of preparation. If you want to be ready for the challenges ahead, you must use moments of stability to hone your skills. Yet the city wasn't entirely alone. Manwë's great eagles, led by the majestic Thorondor, became allies of Gondolin. They patrolled the skies, protecting the city from potential invaders and ensuring its secret remained hidden. How many times does Tolkien remind us that true strength lies not only in isolation but also in alliances? In life, the greatest achievements aren't accomplished alone. You need allies, friends, and mentors. Even the best hidden city in the world needs watchful eyes in the sky to survive, but there was something subtly unsettling about Gondolin. While Angband was under siege, Turgon began to isolate himself more and more. He believed that Gondolin should remain closed off to the world, refusing to help even when other elves were in need. A fatal mistake. The arrogance of feeling secure makes many ignore the warning signs of danger. It's like someone who convinces themselves that they'll never need to change, that they'll never leave their comfort zone. But sooner or later, the world comes knocking, and when it does, it always happens abruptly. And so, while Gondolin shone like a hidden jewel in the mountains, fate was quietly turning against it. Because, as history always shows us, no wall, no matter how impenetrable, it seems, can stand forever. Not all stories begin with betrayal, but some are doomed from the start. Aradhel, Turgon's sister, was a different kind of elf. She couldn't stand the high walls of Gondolin, the suffocating security, the life of isolation. She craved freedom, the wind in her hair, adventure beyond the mountains, and one day, defying her brother, she left. That decision would seal the city's fate. Notice how some choices, even small ones, carry a weight we can't see at the time. Often we think we're just distancing ourselves from something suffocating, but in reality, we're walking straight into an irreversible destiny. Aradhel wandered through Middle-earth until she fell into the hands of Ul, a dark elf who dwelled in the depths of the Nan-Elmoth forests. He wasn't like the other elves. He shunned light, preferred shadows, and had a heart of iron. Yet somehow, Aradhel stayed by his side, and from that union, Meglin was born. The child carried the noble blood of Gondolin, but also the darkness of his father. How many times does history show us that our environment shapes us as much as our heritage? Meglin grew up torn between two worlds, the love for Gondolin's grandeur and the bitterness inherited from Ul. When we find ourselves caught between extremes, doubt can consume us, but Aradhel never forgot her true home. One day, she decided to return to Gondolin, taking Meglin with her. Ul pursued them, furious at being abandoned. When he finally reached the city walls, he was captured by the guards and brought before Turgon. The king offered him a choice: live in Gondolin as one of his subjects or die right there. Ul chose death, but not before trying to drag his son down with him. In a final act of rage, he hurled a spear at Meglin, but Aradhel threw herself in front and took the blow. She died in her brother's arms. The past, once again, exacted its toll. Meglin, now orphaned, grew up as a noble in Gondolin. He was intelligent, skillful, and a natural strategist. Yet there was something dark within him, an ambition that grew with each passing day. He loved his cousin Idril, Turgon's daughter, but that love was forbidden, and it ate away at him. An unrequited desire can be more destructive than hatred itself. Meglin became one of the most respected among Gondolin's elves, yet his heart was a battleground. How many empires have fallen because one man felt rejected? The greatest threat to a realm isn't always an enemy army. Sometimes it's just a discontented soul within its own walls. And so, as Meglin tried to bury his pain beneath his rise, Gondolin continued to prosper, oblivious to the fact that the seed of betrayal had already been planted. Because in the end, what truly destroys an empire isn't an external force, but the invisible cracks that grow from the inside out. Every great downfall begins with a whisper. Meglin, consumed by envy and unreturned love for Idril, roamed restlessly through the mines and along the walls of Gondolin. He yearned for more, for something he could never have, and it was in that restlessness that fate set a trap for him. On one of his explorations, Meglin was captured by orcs and brought before Morgoth, the Dark Lord, who had already bent kings and corrupted noble hearts. Didn't need much to make him yield. He promised power, riches, and above all, Idril. In return, just one small secret: the location of Gondolin. When Maeglin returned to the city, no one suspected a thing. He was still seen as a noble elf, a leader among craftsmen and warriors. But deep inside, he carried the weight of betrayal. How many empires in history have been destroyed by a single traitor? How many great companies, families, or societies have been ruined by someone who, for a moment, put their own desires above everything else? The truth is, the enemy within is always more dangerous than the one lurking outside. And Maeglin had already lit the fuse that would ignite Gondolin. Then came the night when the mountains trembled. Morgoth's legions descended upon the city like a storm of fire. Balrogs advanced like living demons. Orcs tore through the streets, and iron dragons crushed the sacred gates. Turgon, the great king, watched the destruction unfold, and even amid the chaos, refused to abandon his people. "Gondolin will not fall," he cried, yet the city was already doomed. How many leaders have been caught in that trap of denial? When danger becomes undeniable, it's often too late to act. In his arrogance, Maeglin tried to forcefully tear Idril away from her family, but he was thwarted by Tur, the man she loved. The traitor was hurled from the city walls, meeting his end on the very stones he had sworn to protect. Yet his fate was nothing compared to that of Gondolin. The city that had stood for centuries, that had been the hope of the Elves, now burned in ashes. The betrayal of one man destroyed what thousands had built, and so Gondolin vanished from the lands of Valinor, its glory lost, its people scattered. But was it really the end? Or was there one last spark of hope hidden among the shadows of the flames? Not all stories end in ashes. As Gondolin crumbled under Morgoth's blaze, one final thread of hope still glimmered in the darkness. Idril and Tuor, foreseeing that the city wouldn't last forever, had secretly built an escape route, a hidden tunnel that led out beyond the walls. Most of the elves didn't know about it, and even those who did doubted they would ever need to use. It sound familiar? How many times do we ignore the need for an exit plan until it's too late? Planning for the worst isn't pessimism, it's survival. In the midst of chaos, Idril and Tuor gathered the survivors and led them out. But the escape wasn't easy. They were pursued by orcs and dark creatures still bent on eradicating what remained of Gondolin. Then something unexpected happened. Thorondor and his eagles soared into the sky, diving upon the enemies and ensuring that some managed to escape. Tolkien always showed that hope can come from the most unexpected places. In life, the greatest help can appear in the darkest moments, but only for those who refuse to give up. Among those who escaped was a special boy, Eärendil, the son of Idril and Tuor. Born from the union of elves and men, he carried within him the destiny of Middle-earth. Years later, that very boy would sail the seas to Valinor, the realm of the Valar, pleading for aid against Morgoth. Imagine that, the son of a destroyed city, a survivor among ruins, becoming the linchpin for the salvation of an entire world. How many times in life do we see something similar? Today's failure might just be the foundation for tomorrow's great victory. The Valar heard Eärendil's plea and for the first time in ages decided to act directly against Morgoth. A celestial army was gathered, and the war that followed would change the fate of Middle-earth. What Gondolin couldn't achieve on its own, its last son managed by crossing oceans and touching powerful hearts. This teaches us something essential. The greatest victory doesn't always come in the heat of battle, but in the seeds we plant for the future. Thus, while the few survivors of Gondolin pressed on, its story was never forgotten. Because as long as there is someone to remember, to fight, and to turn the past into a lesson, no greatness is ever truly lost. But will Gondolin's legacy endure in the world that follows? Time may erase cities, but it never erases their stories. Gondolin is gone, destroyed by fire and betrayal, but its legacy lived on in Middle-earth. The weapons and artifacts forged by its legendary smiths would still be discovered centuries later. Glamdring, Turgon's sword, eventually ended up in Gandalf's hands. Sting, the small blade wielded by Bilbo and Frodo against the forces of darkness, came from the forgotten treasures of the hidden city. Every time a hero in The Lord of the Rings raised one of these blades, it was as if a fragment of Gondolin was still fighting. But Gondolin's greatest legacy wasn't forged of steel. It was written in blood. Eärendil, the son of Idril, and Tuor became a legend, sailing to Valinor and convincing the Valar to march against Morgoth. His sacrifice brought about the War of Wrath, an event so cataclysmic it swallowed entire continents and erased Angband from the map. Morgoth was defeated, banished to the void beyond the world, and it all began with the fall of Gondolin. See the irony? The city's end wasn't its ruin. It was the spark that ignited the greatest victory in Middle-earth's history. Sometimes the greatest defeats are merely the beginning of something monumental. And even after ages, elves and men still recounted the tales of the hidden city. The wise in Rivendell spoke of Gondolin with reverence, and the few remaining of its people carried the teachings of their ancestors with them. That is true immortality, not the kind that dwells in the body, but the kind that lives on in minds and hearts. Those who write their story the right way are never truly forgotten. In creating Gondolin, Tolkien left us with a powerful lesson. Time may destroy walls, but it cannot destroy ideals. Even when something we built with all our might falls, its impact can continue to shape the world. How many times have we tried to protect something at any cost, only to realize later that its destruction was necessary for something greater? Gondolin fell, but its spirit never vanished. And so, as the last echoes of the hidden city resounded in legend, one question remained. If even Gondolin, the most beautiful city of the elves, could be destroyed, what truly endures forever? Great stories always leave lessons. Gondolin, the secret city of the elves, was built with hope, surrounded by walls that seemed unbreakable. But in the end, it wasn't an army that destroyed it. It was a choice, a misstep, a single traitor who opened the gates to ruin. And that is the truth that few want to accept. The greatest danger rarely comes from outside. In life, in business, in relationships, it is within our walls that the cracks begin to form. How many great companies have fallen because they trusted the wrong person? How many friendships and families have been shattered by a single decision? But if Gondolin teaches us anything, it's that nothing ever truly ends. Knowledge survives. The legacy of its survivors shaped the fate of Middle-earth, and centuries later, the echoes of the lost city were still present in the great battles against Sauron. And in real life, what you build can last. If you know how to leave an impact, an idea, a lesson, a movement, everything can stay alive even after you're gone. But the question is, are you building something that's truly worth remembering? Now, take a moment and think, what are your Gondolins? What are you trying to protect, build, or keep standing? And more importantly, are you watching for the cracks before it's too late? This story isn't just about elves and battles, it's about recognizing the warning signs before destiny exacts its price. If you've made it this far, congratulations. Few truly know this story, and even fewer understand what it really means. But if you want to keep diving into the world of The Lord of the Rings, Tolkien, and the legends of Middle-earth, you know what to do. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notifications, and continue this journey with me, because there's still so much more to explore.